approve the agenda?
I make the motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
I second.
In favor?
Aye.
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 No minutes because I'm not that fast.
Thank you. Thank you. Tom needs
Turn
to.
off Tom. I need to mute Tom.
Okay. Not specifically Tom, but his recording. So I had planned to put all these comments together.
I did.
But you did?
Yeah, this morning.
Can you send it out, or can you show it on the screen?
I can share screen. Now there's some, the only comments that I think I got were from Steve and Tom, and Tom's overlaps with some of the paragraphs you had, so there is some issues with that. So let me share screen.
Thank you for working so fast and hard, Stephanie.
You know, you guys just are my priority, and so who needs sleep and all that kind of stuff?
So much for the divorce settlement. Before we get into these, I just I want Janet to talk about. She sent the email about the affordable housing driving population growth, and so I just want to give one. I want her to say something about it, but two, I want to say that's not how I feel. I don't feel the affordable housing component is. I mean, it's a component of it, but it's not driving population growth. I don't know if anyone else feels that, but I don't want Janet left with that feeling if that's not correct. It's correct. Just take a minute. Janet, you can say what you say, and maybe somebody else wants to chime in.
Joe, I'll chime in, because I think it might have come up from that conversation we had yesterday about how to get to that number of housing units. And I feel the same way as you do, Dan and Janet. I don't believe that is driving any of the growth or meaningful growth in Edina. My point is, that's the one area that we're attaching a solid number and goal to. And as I viewed it, which Bernadette cleared up with her comments, in order to get that number, we would have had to build, 90% more units, just using the exclusionary or inclusionary housing component. But the way Bernadette looked at it, we could build specific developments of affordable housing that would also get us to that number. So I don't feel that is, I thought that was a great graph and clearly shows that there's a lot of development going on in Edina, and I was super curious which development was coming online now that had 400 and something units. But I thought it was a great piece of information.
Janet, does that get to the heart of your concern, or were there other comments made that led you to write the email?
Yeah, it's a component that I have been listening to our conversation throughout, and I just keep feeling like when we talk about population growth and school impact, I just feel like there is a coded language to say the people who are looking for affordable housing are the ones who are going to explode our classroom size in that. That's my interpretation. That's what I'm hearing.
So I just for myself, I clearly said the school's obligation is to teach whoever shows up at their door, lives in the district. Doesn't matter if they're living in a brand new $7 million home or they're living in a set-aside unit in an apartment building somewhere there. So the school's got to teach whoever lives here. And doesn't matter to me where they live, as long as they're in the school district.
Yes. And you're absolutely correct. But then I also couple it with the data point of the Reinhardt report, which says our population, our multi-housing are really not driving the school population as high as we want to think. So it's those anecdotal pieces of information that truly trouble me, to try and say, and school population is a very important factor to what we are doing. They are separated, but they are related. I mean, I have said many times, I moved to Edina because of school. So the housing part plays a major role. I need to find housing in order to be able to attend school.
Yes.
So this report to me was so important, and I really have not dug into it a lot. Of course, I'm multiplying myself many directions, but I truly like that it was so timely. I would like to inject it because the 4 and 5 star are quite a bit. And when people are upset about development, maybe I'm mixing up what I'm hearing out from our general population with us. There could be a little bit of that on my part, so forgive me for that. But the development and the affordable housing pieces is mixed up, and sometimes it has been used to try and advance that affordable piece, but we really don't have many units of affordable being constructed.
So you would like to see a statement in the executive summary calling that out, that affordable is not driving the population increase. It's just a small component of it.
That's correct.
I think that's good language to have in there. Anybody else?
Merritt and Tom.
Tom, you go ahead first.
I'd just like to add on to Janet's statement that there's over 1,000 students who are in the Edina school system through the open enrollment program, and an Edina resident would get priority over an Edina resident would be admitted into the school system, and a new open enrollee would not be given that slot if there was no room. So that's just to kind of reinforce Janet's point.
So, but the issue here is she wants a statement in the executive summary, which I support.
Right.
Calling out so no one says the opposite of it, that the affordable issue, whatever you think about it, it's not driving the growth in units and population in city population nor in school population. And I agree we should say that. So I'm looking for
I just wanted to kind of reinforce it that there is that flexibility within the current school situation.
Does anybody else support what Janet wants to put in the executive summary?
I do.
Just need one more person to say I do.
I think it's fine.
Good. Okay, let's move on. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, I just had one comment because there was a lot of discussion yesterday about kind of the growth concerns overall. You know, Joe was talking a lot about that. If this group does feel that Edina needs to be cognizant of not just growing, you know, without any sort of consideration of, you know, is there too fast a pace? I'm just putting out there, not for discussion now, but just to think, would there be any reason to put in the report that the task force isn't suggesting unlimited growth? And, you know, if it's going to be only a certain amount of growth or a certain pace, the city needs to be more conscientious about ensuring that, or not ensuring, but trying to think about meeting those affordable housing unit needs in that growth prioritized over market rate. That would be a stronger statement. I don't know if it's appropriate, and we don't have to discuss it now, but I just want to throw it out there.
I think we already have that in our top 5 priorities, where we prioritize affordable housing as number 1 and general occupancy market rate housing as number 2, and they're virtually the same size.
Okay.
Okay, Stephanie, let's see your handiwork.
Okay. Oh, I'm still on shared screen. Sorry about that, folks. during that discussion. That makes it a little more challenging.
I sent comments too. I don't know where they went.
Oh, I am so sorry. I did not. Why Stephanie talks, let me, Stephanie, did you get comments from Bernadette?
I just resent them to you, Stephanie, this morning, but I sent them to Dan yesterday.
Okay.
They have not yet arrived. Let me refresh my email. All right, so I will need to somehow get these included because I do not see them, Bernadette.
So let's, Burnett, would you, I don't have them either. Would you send them to me again to my, whatever address you send them to, say out loud what it's going to be. And then Stephanie, why don't you start with what you've got?
All right, because Bernadette, we have learned, is an editor extraordinaire. She has hidden her talents from us. So I think that whatever we get discussed here, I would still like, I mean, if with you agreeing, her to run through it to tighten it up.
Okay.
No discourtesy to Merritt.
Can you
Right.
expand this, please?
Yeah, you said Bernadette is, and then you said Merritt is, but we know.
No, I said Bernadette, but I said no discredit to Merritt.
Oh,
Because I was praising Bernadette. So let me zoom this. Okay, is that better, Steve?
Yes, thank you.
I don't think I can get it any larger.
That's fine.
So this is what I don't know how you want to proceed. This is what was presented with the red. The blue is based on the comments that I had received, less Bernadette's.
the 2040 is Steve's comment.
And I am getting confirmation today because it was raised yesterday. It's generally considered the 2040. I think Edina has been a little unique and an outlier by naming it on the year it was started to get drafted, not the year in which it's supposed to run through. So, yeah.
I suggest we just don't use the number. The Edina Comprehensive Plan, there aren't multiple versions of them. It's always just one.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right.
I also had an additional change there that doesn't seem to have been captured, which is with significant community input.
Right here.
Yeah, that was the first. In my edit, I said change it from 2018 to 2040 and change it to so that it reads 2040 comprehensive plan with significant community input.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to acknowledge the fact that there was a lot of effort put into community engagement in the development of the comprehensive plan.
That's good.
182 public meetings. Okay. And then where it gets a little fuzzy is there was, Tom edited the former paragraph that was there that is different than the version that Dan sent around. So this is a little bit repetitive. So we have the City Council Commission, the Housing Task Force in 2019, provide further guidance around housing priorities for the city. I think that's all. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
I didn't see any comments. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I have a comment on the word murder versus death. And the reason I have concerns with it is we are pacifying a human life. In my view, they are trying to communicate George Floyd died of a natural cause. That's when we say,
oh, pandemic and death. Seems like it follows that he died of the pandemic.
Yeah. George Floyd was murdered.
How about the killing?
Yeah, killing would work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the legal ramifications.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
killing.
Yep.
Okay, because murder, I mean, Tom's point was that he hasn't been tried yet, so the term first degree or second degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
The killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. The events rock the economy, politics, and foundation of our societal relationships.
So this is all this blue is what is from Tom yesterday.
All this blue is from Tom yesterday. Tom, let me unmute you.
Let's be clear.
It's just
stuff in bold.
Yeah.
The stuff in bold is Tom's addition. What he added to was Merritt's original version of the executive summary. That's the blue part.
Right.
So the only thing we really need to focus on is the stuff that's in bold, because that's what Tom is recommending we add, and we can try to figure out where it belongs in the red version that Dan recommended.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's look at the first bold.
Examples of the impact may include the design and demand for congregate, assisted, or senior housing.
So that's the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And I am going to say, yes, we don't know the full impact of the congregate living or even in the multi-housing units. With that virus, so many things are coming to light when you're in a building with several other people. There are people who are going to be scared. So that may have an impact on new multi-housing that should be coming down. So people may be fleeing multi-housing unit because of COVID. We don't know yet.
Yeah, I think this is an appropriate thing to have in the executive summary.
Mm-hmm.
The other bold was included.
On those two, on both the George Floyd killing and the COVID, is that that should probably be towards the very end of the executive summary, saying, hey, we did all this, and this is the environment we did it in, which limited. I think it's easy to connect the COVID to the fact that we weren't able to do this work the way we wanted to do it, right? We weren't able to engage the community at all. Frankly, I didn't engage the community like I thought we were going to up front. I'm less clear on how the tragic killing of George Floyd ties into the housing report. And so if we could clarify that, is there a...
I think it's the context. I think we have to state, I mean, to me, and it's a little hard to be looking, because the version that I edited, Dan's version, is significantly different in this area than Merritt's version. So in the Dan version of the executive summary, I like how it says 2020 has been an unprecedented year marked by the social unrest in Minneapolis and across the nation resulting from the killing of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police. Both the pandemic and the social unrest from George Floyd's killing have contributed to the context in which the task force evaluated the future of housing in Edina.
Yes.
To me, I feel like that's an important statement to have in the report. I mean, and the people understand that obviously we're aware and we're not, and I think that it just influences and makes us think, has made me think differently about equity and access and unconscious bias and, mistreatment of people of different races. And I mean, it has changed how I've thought about things. And so I think it's important to call that out.
I agree.
I agree. And the way you just said that was really clear. Because it has affected the way I think about access to housing and equity in housing. you said it so clearly, Bernadette. Right? It wasn't dangling out there. It's just, oh, by the way, the George Floyd killing happened while we did this. It happened, and we talked about it as a task force, and agreed that it affected our thinking on housing, or enlightened our thinking, or did something.
Yeah.
Shall we go with Bernadette? First of all, what Bernadette read is different than what I had, but it was better. Should we go with what Bernadette read?
Yes.
Anybody opposed to it?
I sent my entire comments to you and to Stephanie, my
Okay.
edit on your draft. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you guys hadn't received those. I'm not sure.
Oh, I got it here. That's fine. But let's.
All right, why don't I open that up? I want to copy this sentence of Steve's.
Well, and it sounds like everyone with the exception of Tom, worked off of the draft that Dan sent in the email. And and I sent my comments to Dan last night as well, but I did not copy you, Stephanie. Sorry about that.
That's fine. All right, so I'm opening up Bernadette's version because, and I'm just going to throw this sentence in here. It's not going to make sense where it is right now, but I wanted to make sure that, as Steve had a good point about, you're not asking, you don't want to survey all strategic, all strategies, but selected ones. Okay, let's start over.
Dan,
Yeah.
I also sent my comments to you, and I'm not sure if they got included.
I've got everyone's here. So I was going to go through all the emails, but because of the work Stephanie did, let's go through the way she's doing it, and then if something was missed, we can call it up again.
All right.
But it's 7:24, so let's keep pushing ahead. And can I just say, we're not going to get through it if everyone's got to come back after someone else says something and say the same thing. We won't get through it. Okay.
Okay.
It's Stephanie.
Going back to the first. Oh, let me view Zoom 200. Okay.
And can you give Tom, because I think we're getting background noise from him.
It could be the driving too. All right, so Bernadette added Edina has a diverse mix of housing types instead of just a mix as of 2019. And then, so she just added some words there.
So her changes are in purple.
Her changes are in purple.
Thank you.
So this is back to Dan's version. So Tom, we have to figure out how to make sure that your perspective is in here without having to go back and forth to different versions.
Can we not do that now? We're
Right.
going to accept his, but we'll do the editing after the hour is up. Is that
Yep.
okay, Tom? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes. The only thing I'd like to make is in an early version of your and Bernadette's, is just a couple of little potential examples like senior housing or the need to have more low-income housing in Edina. That's it.
Okay.
So some potential examples. Potential examples of what might come out.
Okay. Go ahead,
Getting rid of
Stephanie.
the date on comprehensive plan, adding Steve's with significant community input. Then with Bernadette's changes, should be the task force recommends that goals and recommendations should be thoroughly reviewed with residents of Edina with public health conditions allow. Furthermore, the task force recommends that principles, goals, and strategies in this report should be included. Now, here's where Steve's is different. Starting with this furthermore, Steve recommended that furthermore, there's a specific recommendation in the report for new questions to be included. So he's saying that don't include all questions, but have some selected questions because they're going to accept like 3 or 4 because the survey is huge. So they're not going to accept 25 questions. So Steve narrows it down to having there be pointed questions based on this report that goes in the survey and not encompassing the entire report.
Is anybody opposed to adding that language to the executive summary?
Do we want to amend the language to say pointed questions around, you know, what are the key questions? Is it growth? Is it zoning? Is it, I mean,
In there?
We should let the council decide what they want to get more feedback on based on our recommendations.
Yeah, and Norm had specifically put into the strategy that he wanted to have 3 specific areas probed or included in the quality of life survey. So it's very clear in our strategies further on in the document which ones.
All right, and since this is a summary, we probably don't need to lay them out here then if they are elsewhere.
Right. Okay.
She rewrote, she wrote that to this is what she had read, Bernadette is being she, had just read to us. 2020 has also been an unprecedented year. I changed death to killing, resulting from the killing of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police. Both the pandemic and the social unrest from George Floyd's death have contributed to the context in which the task force evaluated the future of housing in Edina. So I think this does clarify that.
We've already accepted that.
Okay.
Great.
We're going to get rid of whatever it's officially called and just call it the comprehensive plan, so we can get rid of that. Encourage the development and maintenance of a range of housing affordable to a wide range instead of a larger range of incomes, a wide range of incomes. So these should be bulleted, I presume. The
Yes.
Metropolitan Council's application. I don't know if I can do that in this, so that just will be bulleted. Metropolitan Council's allocation of new housing units, particularly affordable units. Task Force desire to support housing policy that is consistent with community drivers. This has been a huge topic of conversation, so I think this is a good, I mean, I'm not a voting member, but I think this is a good addition to include. She did delete the Musa.
Yeah, I want that.
City and Task Force desire, so this part probably needs to be some discussion.
That's not a thing. Like, we didn't talk about that.
Well, that's incorrect. I brought the MUSA a number of times and its impact on housing prices. So to say, and both Steve said, to say it's not a thing is incorrect.
Steve?
Just as a general principle, I think we should acknowledge that the executive summary should refer to something that is then further discussed in the document itself. That's what a summary is. And I don't think we touch on MUSA anywhere but in the executive summary.
Well, but we didn't fill the document. The document was filled by Merit.
Well, Merit has listened to all of our conversations, and all of our goals and strategies represent explicitly our work. And in our explicit work, there's no mention of MUSA. And Merit apparently didn't ever hear the term enough to include it in any of her editing. It's just a suggestion. So should we vote on this or not?
Norm?
I was going to say, we did talk about this early on, and it may be that was before Merit arrived on the scene. And my vote is, I would say it's has an important impact. I would vote to include it.
Well, if we put it in, we should go with what Dan edited it down to. Because Dan had a shorter version than the one that's shown here.
What I added down to was the Metropolitan Council's tight MUSA allocation that decreases affordability throughout the region by artificially raising land cost, period.
I can agree with that.
I don't have a strong opinion on this, but I want to echo what Steve said. If it's in the executive summary, then it should be in the report. If it's not in the executive summary, we shouldn't spend much time in the report on it at all.
Or vice versa. If it's not in the report, if it's not discussed thoroughly in the report, it shouldn't be in the executive summary.
I agree with all that, but it should be in the report.
I've gone through every single word of the entire report from front to back, like multiple times. And if you read the report the way it is, it's very coherent, and I feel like captures our what the intent of the report or this group is. I think the MUSE allocation was certainly a contextual piece, but it's not part of what we're recommending and moving forward. It doesn't rise to the level of, to me, that you're going to call it out in this very brief overview of what we've worked on. I know that some people have a real axe to grind with the Metropolitan Council, but I don't think that this is the place to put it in. I mean, it feels like it's just
I don't know who has an axe to grind with the Metropolitan Council, but
it's been meeting after meeting, debating their methodologies and whether that they're relevant and the allocations. And I mean, there seems to be some skepticism about what they're doing, that there's some sort of like evil empire over there in St. Paul influencing the communities unduly. And I mean, maybe that's true, but again, it doesn't seem particularly relevant to what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, it is. It's an important factor. The Met Council, in their attempt to control sprawl, keeps a tight lid on the MUSA line. Okay, there's impacts to that. And the impact of a smaller supply with no demand is higher prices. The fact that it's not in the report doesn't matter here because Merit made most of the decision what's in the report.
That's not true, Dan. You're saying that she was independently writing this when it was she wrote it based on the comments that is.
You're putting words in my mouth, okay? Merit put many things in the report that were never discussed.
And I've edited out everything that I think that's her. I mean, if everybody goes through and uses the methodology that she's asked us to use like 10 times, where you go to the Google Doc, you put in your suggestions. I have deleted and deleted. You can ask Stephanie and Merritt. I mean, I've deleted and deleted and deleted language, rewritten stuff, added things. I mean, and then they go through and they accept and suggest, and you can see exactly what's been accepted and suggested. I think two things that I've suggested haven't made it through their review, and I'm sure other people have similar experience. They are actively working on the document. It's a draft writing process where we're rewriting and writing. And
I get that, but my comments about the MUSA line have not been. So I've made multiple comments about the MUSA line in the amount of land in the metropolitan region and its impact on affordability, and they're not accepted.
But you've written them into the report?
I've commented on them.
I've commented on things in the report, and all I get back is declined or declined. So my experience is parallels Dan's more than Bernadette's on this. And I'm not a great editor, but I've asked questions and it just declined. So that's been my personal experience.
Well, my questions have been declined too. I mean, like if I'm asking, because they're trying to keep the report clean, I understand that. I'm saying, what does this mean? Or we need to write more here. They're declining that. But I'm talking like if you're making substantive changes to the text.
Well, my comments are trying to entice substantive changes to the text. But we're getting off target on the executive summary here. I think that whole report is still out there, and I'm not satisfied with where we've left off personally.
Steve?
I think Dan started this meeting by suggesting that we would vote, and we got to the point where we had discussed a topic and needed to move on. So are we at that point where we should vote on this and just move on?
Yeah, that's Janet talk too.
I just need to make a comment. I think that is a very damning statement that Dan just said, that Merit is making decisions unilaterally without input from us. I believe it will only be fair if you can cite very specific things that Merit has done without the approval of the task force. We have a responsibility for Merit to say what we want. And if she's saying something that we didn't agree on, I think we need to call it out specifically. That is a very powerful accusation, and I really don't like it personally. So if you can perhaps give a very specific item that you are aware that Merit has done that we did not agree on, it is fair to Merit. That's all I'm going to say.
So what I said was that, unlike Bernadette, I have made comments about affordability in the MUSA line multiple times, and they did not survive the edits.
These discussed by the group. The things that are in the report are things that were agreed upon and discussed as a group. So it can't be just Dan's opinion that is included in there. It has to reflect the opinion of the majority thought within the task force, not just Dan's.
I don't recall you ever suggesting an edit that involved conversation about the MUSA line until the discussion that went on this week, which I haven't touched. You guys have just been discussing.
So how do I go back through a back class of it to find my comments? How do I do that?
It would be probably the first version. You go into Google Docs, they're all saved.
Okay. So I'll go find those.
So I think
I do want to say something. What Janet said, I think is fair. I am trying to put in this report things that I feel the group represent what the group does. Various individuals have offered suggestions that either go into too much detail or don't reflect kind of a group sentiment. And so there are times at which I haven't added everything to the report that everyone's wanted me to. And I think if I had, you'd have a very long report. So for instance, Tom's probably written 10 pages, of the report, and a lot of it has been incorporated, but not all.
Okay, so again, now are we at a point where we've had the discussion and we should vote?
Let Norm say something and then we'll vote.
Well, one example, Merritt, is you have written into the document a number of times talking about zoning exclusion, and that is an area where I've commented on. I think it's not appropriate and doesn't really apply to Edina current day, and those have been rejected. And I'm not satisfied that we have really taken out material that doesn't reflect the feeling of our task force.
Norm, I was a part of that decision, and it was because that was not majority thought.
I don't know that we've had,
Janet, it was,
that we've had
I
a discussion
believe
on that.
Bernadette spoke up against the relevance of that. I think Steve was supportive of that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Janet spoke up very strongly that she thought that was relevant and pertinent to the current housing situation and needed to be acknowledged. And moving forward, Tom said that he was somewhat agnostic, that he could probably be swayed either way. So there were some very strong voices that said that that should be in there because it does frame the current housing situation. And by knowing where you come from, you can help define where you're going.
And I would add that Bernadette made some suggestions about tightening it up and removing some of the statements that were especially strong about exclusionary zoning. And I agreed with Bernadette in what she suggested. And so, you know, it's sort of bare bones now.
So let me say this. Let me say one thing and let's go to a vote. Someone listening to this conversation would walk away and say, how the heck do they decide what goes in there and doesn't go in there? Because there's multiple reasons. People have strong feelings. There was a vote. Someone felt that it should be included. So there's no consistency there. But because I want to keep moving, let's vote on my language, whether it should be.
Okay, so the vote, and we're going to do 5 to 5 regarding adding the bullet point in the executive summary of metropolitan councils, stringent, tight MUSA allocation that decreases affordability throughout the region by artificially raising land cost.
Right.
And 5 is to vote to keep it. Is that correct?
The vote is to keep that in there.
Okay.
Okay, we have, let me write this down. So we have a 5, a 1, a 3, a 5. Steve, what was yours?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Yep.
3. Bernadette, what's yours?
1.
Joe?
We discussed this. We have discussed this in the past. I would say a 5. I'm fine with leaving it in there.
3 5s, 2 3s, and 2 1s. So we do not have a majority vote to keep it in because the 3s are neutral and the 1s are against. So it's basically a 3 to 4 vote.
Can I suggest a compromise?
Yes.
Which is that we take this language and we move it from the executive summary into the body of the report somewhere. That when we're talking about community drivers or land development costs, we find a home for it so that it's mentioned, but it's not necessarily called out in the executive summary.
That's acceptable to me. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody opposed to that?
No.
Next item. Thank you.
Okay, I will finish that later and get to you. All right, so next, additionally, this report is informed by the Maxfield. That was something that Steve added, Maxfield Research Housing Market Study completed for the city of Edina. Oh, okay, well, I think Bernadette added that. By Maxfield Real Estate Research. That study examined housing market trends locally. The study identified, instead of focused on, but identified gaps in the Edina housing stock where demand far. Okay, so Bernadette added for housing development. And then we have these, I don't know why they're highlighted necessarily.
Stephanie?
Go ahead, Norm.
The Maxfield report was completed in 2020.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. It was commissioned in 2019, but it was done and it finished in 2020. Yep. Thanks.
Stephanie, this is just a small thing, but officially, the title for the Maxfield company is Maxfield Research and Consulting.
Yeah, we can
That's
use
on their study, so it's just a little thing.
Nope, that's important. Okay.
Yep.
Promote life cycle. So deleted through the easing of land use regulations, just kept it simple bullets: promote life cycle, enable diverse housing stock, reduce housing development costs, encourage sustainable design and technology. So she eliminated the excess words because it's a summary, and then they can dive in.
And if you read through the report, when we talk about the land use regulation portion, it is brought up both in the context of diverse housing stock and reducing housing development costs. So I just felt like putting it on bullet 2 isn't necessarily true. We recommend in the report the evaluation and potential reconfiguration or easing or whatever word you want to use, to allow for all of the items 1 through 4. So that's the reason I moved that, just because I felt like it felt kind of arbitrary to stick it just on item number 2.
There you go.
Yeah, just a little thing. When you say 2020, it was April 2020. I'm looking at the cover sheet for the market study. And because it's April, I think that kind of also brings home the issue of trying to do the research, and then the COVID and George Floyd kind of really took off after that. So
it is April, but we heard it. Everything shut down in March. I thought it was February.
Okay, but the document says April 2020, so that's all.
Okay. Tom suggested when we talk about the top 5 priorities, put the number, instead of having the numbers in the back as parentheses, by putting them up front, add 992 affordable housing units, add 900 instead of having the parentheses in the back. I don't know if anyone feels strongly.
So I just got a question here because I just went through chapter 4 again yesterday. These numbers stack with chapter 4 and the comp plan.
Steve?
Are these, sorry, what's the question?
The 992 and the 900 track. How many housing units does the comp plan say we're going to add between 2020 and 2030?
I think the number is 3,700, but I'd have to go back and double check that, Dan.
These came from the Maxfield, though, I think. Or did they come from the... They're a combination between Maxfield and Met Council, correct?
So going back to what Janet said, or the first thing we discussed, if we don't use the 992 for affordable housing, we use the number from the Met Council, which was.
Oh, right. This is the comp plan.
If we use the 1800, then almost 2/3 of new housing units in the next 10 years in Edina are affordable units, the way this reads.
No.
What am I missing?
You said 2/3. You got a number of 900. The next number is 900 of general occupancy market rate units.
Let me. I didn't say it clearly, Steve. I'm sorry. You said that there's 3,700 new housing units in the comp plan over the next 10 years. Is that the correct number?
I don't know that it is, but that's the one number that I remember. So.
If it's 3,700, and then for the affordable housing units, don't use the 992 from the city council. Use the allocation number from the Met Council, which was like 1,800.
Right. So
it's like it's a little over 50% of the units over the next 10 years would be affordable units using that calculation. It doesn't seem correct. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think we need to go back and look at the actual numbers, because there are 2 different numbers that are provided by the Met Council. One is your affordable housing allocation or goal, which is 992 to 1804, and then there's a separate number, which is
Lifestyle.
independent housing units, affordable housing units, which is the 3,700 number for all housing.
Well, it's life cycle housing, so it's multifamily housing, but it's a
Yeah.
Venn diagram. So of that 3,200 units, some of those will be also the 1804, but not all. I mean, they could be completely encapsulated or they could be not, because some of the affordable housing of the 1804 or 992, whatever you want, could be single family, in which case they're not counted against the 3,200. So the 3,200 is all multifamily housing. The 1804 is multifamily and single family, so they overlap.
Okay. I say okay to move on. I'm still not understanding it, but let's keep moving. We can check these numbers.
Tom?
Can I make a comment about the numbers? I mean, so I'm on the phone. I don't see what you guys have. It is mind-boggling, complex, and we need to simplify it and line up our data from a source, and use if we're going to talk about these things from the Met Council, I think all of our data should be from the same source. So let's not pick, one data point from the City Council and another data point from the Met Council. We can try and line them up from a source.
We have two sources. One is the Maxfield study and the other is the Met Council allocation or goal. And I think we have to live with the fact that there are those two. They are independent, but they are both legitimate sources of numbers. So I think we're okay.
The 992 come from the City Council?
Yes.
That is from the Metropolitan Council. That is the goal.
No, Stephanie said,
We keep over this so many times, I cannot believe people can't keep straight that the Met Council goal is 1804 as a need and 992 as a goal. And the reason the number went from 1804 to 992 is that there isn't sufficient federal funding. This is very straightforward stuff.
Okay, Steve, you could not be more condescending. Okay, I thought last week Stephanie said the City Council came up with this 992 kind of we think we can get there. Did I misunderstand you, Stephanie?
That is correct. The City Council approved it, but it came from the Met Council.
That part I didn't hear when you talked last week. So the Met Council said 1804, but we don't think we can get there, so let's use a new number.
Yep, and this was in the chart that Steve provided before. So 1804 is the need number, and that is the number that is in the comprehensive plan. They understand that there are limits of financial resources.
No, I get it now.
That's where the 992 came from. So the City Council approved a goal number of 992 up to 1804.
Okay, so getting back to Joe's thing, I don't think we need to use one source, but I think it's confusing the way it is. But let's keep moving because we can figure that out. Tom?
Perhaps we could put an asterisk.
What, Tom?
Perhaps we could put an asterisk or something to say this came from the Met Council, this came from the Maxfield report. I also, someplace under the general occupancy for affordable housing, to me, that's a catch-all term. And nowhere in this summary is there a reminder of people with disabilities under the affordable housing. So I would just like to somehow fit that in under as a subcategory of general occupancy. So those are my two comments.
Okay.
I would just like to offer the Maxfield is important to have both that and the comp plan because the City Council commissioned the Maxfield study to get a market perspective on housing need to complement what was in the comp plan. So they were intentional in wanting that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everybody does. It's just that I think we need to see where the numbers are coming from. So let me say this: at 7:56, I've got a hard stop at 8. Stephanie, are you going to make these?
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
So are you going to make these changes, send them out, and then we can have discussions among ourselves and get
Right,
comments?
but I haven't seen Norm's or Joe's to be able to help incorporate them.
So how about this? Norm and Joe, would you resend your comments to everybody?
Okay.
And then people take a look at them and see if you can say yes, no, and then send them on to Stephanie. Send them on to your comments, on their comments to everybody, and hopefully Stephanie can incorporate them.
Question, are we still under the deadline of midnight tonight for completion of the entire report?
Stephanie says yes.
Yep, because Merritt needs to edit. I mean, she gets a million emails and comments, not a million, but hundreds of, has to go through all the comments because everyone does multiple comments. So she has to absorb them all. Some she talks to with me. There's this process. Needs to finalize that. And then I'm editing it through the weekend just as another set of eyes to, like, I noticed something yesterday.
I would like to go on record to say that this report is still not ready. We talked about a number of, it took us an hour just to even talk about the executive summary. The other issue that I brought up was exclusionary zoning. And it's included in the report as if exclusionary zoning is real and taking place in Edina today. And I don't know what examples that we're looking at that would indicate there is exclusionary zoning taking place.
Norm, the language changed to say that they're no longer in effect. I'll let you know that even though we saw that, and as I said, there are task force members that believe it's important to include this. There are some that think that it's not relevant.
There's a lot of information that says exclusionary zoning is real and it's in place in Edina. And I don't think that that's the right message we want to send in this report.
Having a minimum lot size of 150 feet for a single family house in some neighborhood is not inclusionary.
Is not inclusionary?
Well, wait,
not
Lauren, have you
inclusionary.
read the most recent language?
Bernadette, I think it's.
I know we got a hard stop, but I think that's one example. And there are many examples in there in the report, in my opinion, that if we spent the time and tightened and worked together, we could come to a consensus, making this report a very strong report to the city council. Absent that, there's pretty significant levels of opinions and acceptance of this report that somehow has to be communicated.
I would suggest that if there are areas of the report, and I think I'd said this days ago too, that anyone thinks are really contrary to the task force intent, then you should highlight it and say, I don't think this is consistent and it needs discussion. And then that happens, whether it happens, I don't know when, but I think there are parts of the report that certain people don't agree with, but the task force as a whole is comfortable with.
I would argue that we haven't discussed that in detail.
That's up to you guys. I mean, I am happy to figure out how to accommodate that. It's not going to change the timeline. It's just going to mean adding meetings, but that's a decision for you as a task force.
The one thing that I've noted with all the number of people making changes and suggestions is that you basically every time have to sit down and reread the entire report. I mean, that's like the sections keep changing, the language keeps changing, and I'd say for the better as more and more people are massaging it and putting in their opinions. And if there are areas where you, as a particular task force member, feel like you're not getting heard by Stephanie or Merritt, I mean, why not shoot an email out to the whole group and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, how do we, what do we need to do to get this into the report? Like the MUSA thing, I mean, we were able to come up with a pretty compromise. Dan's happy, everybody's happy, we're moving on. I mean, I don't, like, we got to get to the finish line. So if people have comments, like, make them and let's get it done.
So, thank you.
So, okay.
It'd be nice to have a final report that we could do that to. So it's to Bernadette's point, it's not a moving target. And we still don't even have a final report. So it continues to be this moving target that we all comment on, overlapping. Some get accepted, some don't. There's no discussion on it. And that's where we're at.
So
I think
how about there is a final by Saturday noon that people can look at over the weekend and identify anything that they have concerns about, that can then be discussed on Monday and Tuesday through email or impromptu meeting if absolutely needed.
That email is good, but not sufficient. And I would recommend that we schedule another meeting of this group before we all sign off on a final report.
This could go on indefinitely, though, based on the comments that we're hearing. I mean, I think we could have this same discussion every week through July.
I don't know that I agree with that, Stephanie. We made significant progress on the executive summary in an hour. And if we just chose pieces of the report to continue doing this on, it would be a stronger report. We just haven't been able to focus on it because we have these circular conversations because we don't have a final report. We're trying to shoot at a moving target, and we're not that good. I'm not that good.
I totally disagree with that characterization, but I think everybody needs to read the report again from beginning to end, and then prioritize the areas where there needs to be discussion, and we can determine how much time we or not. And the problem is if everybody raises different sections and we have to go through the entire report, it's like 50 plus pages. It's going to take 50 hours. So, I mean, I think we need to be realistic. I think if everybody sat down, read the current draft of the report cover to cover, and highlighted any areas that they're concerned with, that they feel like need to be further vetted, or they feel like there's secret nefarious language from Merritt or Stephanie or whatever their conspiracy elves, I don't know who's writing it, but the point is, highlight all that stuff, send it out, and then we can figure out if it's possible for us to go through page by page, piece by piece, those sections to get it to a comfort level that, whether it needs to be removed, rewritten, added to, and go from there. That would be my recommendation, is that people should see the actual version of the report that we're working on right now and consider that to be the final version.
Do we have a clean version right now without any commentary, any bubbles?
No, there's still bubbles on the side because some things, are people's general comments and not recommendations for change.
And there were some, I mean, the thing, I've tried to resolve everything and have a few more to do. where resolution is clear, but I've left in some comments where I think other task force members should be looking at the comment that the person has provided. So for instance, Norm has commented on the section he wants taken out, and I've responded about why I think it should be left in, and I've left those comments so other people can see them. But I've cleaned up as many as possible. I've just left ones that I think are more, you know.
Okay, so we have a final version. It sounds like that is readable. There are bubbles on the side, but everything else is the way you'd like it to appear.
Right, and most of the bubbles on the side now are just footnotes because I want to have endnotes, but therefore when it gets transferred, it's easy for the next person to see where all the citations go.
Is there a Word version that I could print out? I'm having some issues with my printer.
I'll see what I can do, Tom, with downloading it and emailing it to you.
Tom, I downloaded it in Word today, and so afterwards, if you'd like, I can walk through it with you.
Yeah, I can print out a Word version if somebody can just send it to me. Thank you.
Yeah, you just want to make sure when you convert to Word that you check the box that says to carry over the comments.
I like Bernadette's suggestion where we take the report and everyone reads it, puts their high-level comments in it, and we see where we end up.
And I just want to remind you that I made that suggestion as well. I appreciate everything that everybody's doing, but I feel like there are a number of times where I suggest something and it's not acknowledged, and then somebody else suggests it and they're thanked. So I'm beginning to feel there's a bias against me. I can't really do anything that's a win.
Yes, you have been saying this. I will back that up. You have been saying that for weeks and weeks and weeks. Your emails have all said, please provide me with high-level comments. Often people, there are very few people that are responding. There are some of the regulars that do respond and have been responsive. So no, Merritt, this is not on you.
I think we are at a point where we are going through analysis paralysis, and I really want us to move forward. Like, we move and then we keep going back, and that's not going to be good for us. We need to move forward. So
that's why there's the deadlines. That's why there's deadlines, because we could go on and spin forever.
Can I suggest that I like what Norm was saying, that there was something that he felt was not true, that it just didn't apply. And I would like us to limit our edits to things that we fundamentally believe just is inaccurate or untrue. That if we have something else that we want to have added into the document, we're past that point. But I think it is important that if there's something that somebody feels is simply untrue, that we ought to highlight that and have a discussion about that. But anything else, we shouldn't try to have a thorough discussion at this late stage after 18 months.
Steve, can we agree that we can also make comments on things that we don't believe belong in the report?
Can, but there's going to be some sort of analysis done, because you may be a minority voice with regards to that.
I get that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the 5 to 5 or some method where we say, hey, we don't think this belongs, or I don't think this belongs in the report, and we discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, like the inclusion of the redlining or the exclusionary zoning map. And by the way, if that were excluded, it would be brought up by the HRRC, and they would ask why that was not in the report.
And we tell them it's our report. We would
no, but you would have to justify. But this is
we
a community.
Justify it. It's our report. It's it's this task force report, and if we feel like it should or shouldn't be in there, we should put it in there or not.
Well, I think we'll get to vote on
someone
this.
else wants.
All right, but Joe, I am going to let you know, you may hear things from the Planning Commission and HRC that you may not agree with. You are going to, as this is in the community engagement process, because they are volunteers and residents of Edina, if they say something that they want in the report that you all decide not to include, you're going to have to justify why, because they are community members as well. And so they're going to make recommendations and suggestions, and they may want things excluded, may want things included. You have a choice of whether or not to include or exclude, but you will have to explain why, and their comments will be provided in their entirety as an addendum.
And our response will be too.
Yep.
Understood. But my point is, we've spent 18 months discussing this with a lot of context and content behind it. And we're making decisions as a task force that we can defend or define or communicate. And if someone has a different opinion, that's fine. We don't have to agree with it or disagree with it. That's our choice.
So, oopsie, I lost it. Where's the report is currently on the Google Drive. It is, if you go into meeting materials, October 28th, which is yesterday, but things have been moving quickly. There's an edit version draft 6. Open that up. Comments have been reviewed, added, commented on, and so you can look at that. And this one includes all of Bernadette's wordsmithing and the discussions that were had at yesterday's meeting, because she's working on it all afternoon.
And what I'm doing right now is I'm saving the version of this moment as an old version. And so you all can keep working in the edit version, but I save these. I try to save it every day or so that if something is lost, we can go back and look at what happened.
Merritt, could I ask you, this morning when I looked at the edit version,
yeah,
the last edit was October 27th. And could you update that when you do further editing to show the last date of editing so we know what version we're looking at?
Yeah, I try to update that every day. I just, so what I just did, but it's a good point, and I tried to get it to automatically update, but I can't figure out how to do that in Google Docs. So the edit version draft 6, as of this moment, says last updated on October 29th. Okay.
See that?
Where does it say that?
It's on the bottom. It says draft. It's like a footnote.
Yeah, it's part of the footer at the bottom of every page. So when you go back to the old versions, you'll see that they have different dates on the footer.
Yep, got it.
So what's the plan moving forward towards resolution?
That I am going to be wrapping up general edits today and tomorrow, that over the weekend. I mean, Stephanie's going to be giving a whole read through, or any other staff that needs to do that at the city, and flagging anything that's an issue. At the same time, there can be a copy that all of you are reading through and flagging anything that you think is just not consistent with what the task force has discussed or wanted to articulate. And then I will be able to look through all those. And what I'll probably do is put together kind of a list, an inventory of those things for discussion Monday, Tuesday, however it's determined that discussion occur. If it's enough to do over email, or if you guys end up deciding you need to have a video discussion. Maybe some of those just need the fist to 5 for clarity.
Suggest that to make sure we're really drawing to a conclusion of this, that after we submit our comments and you take a look at everything, Merritt, that we schedule a time that we are all together to make sure that we've had a chance to discuss this all together as opposed to just trading emails.
Yeah. I'm looking at the calendar. I agree, Norm. So we need to get this to the HRC and the Planning Commission and the Housing Foundation on like November 9th. So that is a little over a week away. And we need to make sure that all the numbers are done. There's no more X's in the body and all that. So we're really, really running out of time. What do you say? I'm at a loss.
Can we talk tomorrow morning, or is that too soon, or?
I would submit probably tomorrow morning, a little bit soon, unless everybody had nothing to do on their calendar for the rest of today. Not the case.
Yeah.
I'm available any.
Okay.
It's too soon for me. I won't have time to. I won't have meaningful time to spend on it.
I could Monday, but we would have to really be done, and you guys would have to work over the weekend. We can't. I mean, Monday is like beyond. It's a week after drop dead date.
Yep.
And then I would say let's cancel the meeting on Wednesday because it's the day after the election anyway, and we're going to be exhausted and emotionally worn out.
Regardless of the outcome.
So I would say switch Wednesday's meeting to Monday. But that means, seriously, all comments in by end of day tomorrow so we can absorb them, respond, even if it means the graphs. Because, like, I saw, one thing, and Norm, you accurately pointed out you didn't like a picture. Some of those comments and Tom went out and took pictures. So Merritt's going to swap out the picture. But there's other comments like that where, like, we don't know what to do with it. Like, do you have another picture? Do you have another example? If you don't like the example there and we get a comment, I'm just picking on you, Norm. This one is resolvable. But if there's other examples like, I don't like this, we don't know what to do with that. So a solution or a suggestion needs to also be included, if that is the kind of comment.
Well, I don't think we're looking for too many more. In fact, I don't think we want editing comments at this point. We're looking for major concerns.
Yep.
Again, I use the example that Norm put forward that he believes something is untrue. And if that needs to be called out, that makes sense. So I would see very few things in here where people are going to have something where they would say this is an untrue statement that does not belong in our report.
I'm going to jump off, and in regards to meeting on Monday, I may not be present. That's what I am. Monday, the second, I mean.
The day before the election.
Yes.
Before you jump off, Janet, I just want to thank you for wearing your headphone and microphone. The clarity of your voice is so much better. It is such a delight.
Well, thank you. You should have told me much sooner. I apologize. Yeah, I've missed out a lot on my speaking. Yes, when it's hard, it's terrible. But all right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
Stephanie, before you drop off, one of the things that you mentioned was 150-foot frontage is exclusionary zoning. And obviously, I am not the expert on zoning and all the urban planning language. But if I could give you a call later on today, I would like to hear your thoughts on why 150-foot frontage is exclusionary zoning. And maybe I need to revise my thinking on that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, briefly, I'm more than happy to talk to you. I have meetings in the late afternoon, but I'm open midday. Briefly, though, a low-income person generally cannot afford the property taxes nor the house that would be on a property that has to have a minimum lot size of 150 feet wide. It excludes lower income people from the opportunity to be able to move into that neighborhood because the inherent cost of property taxes would just make it not possible. And so there are some folks who have wanted to be able to do lot splits. This is where the lot split came in, to create even 3 lots of 50 feet wide, because then you could build a modest sized home with modest proportion of property taxes that would make it so it's more possible for a household of moderate means to move into the neighborhood. That's not feasible when the minimum lot size is 150. It basically is telling people that you have to be wealthy to move into this neighborhood. So that type of minimum zoning recommendation is considered exclusionary.
I can send.
I would like to add two. Oh, sorry, Mary.
I'll go ahead and I'll get a few articles today that I can share with the task force that kind of try to explain it.
I was going to add that 150 feet is 3 times as much infrastructure per unit as a 50-foot lot. So it's not just the taxes, it's making that a lot, the infrastructure and the size of the house that goes on top of it. There's also an environmental issue about, even though some people say it's a derogatory term, sprawl. So